Hi, and welcome to the Growth Whisperers, where everything we talk about is building enduring great companies. My name is Brad Giles, and as always, joined today by my co-host, Kevin Lawrence. Hello, Kevin. How are things in Vancouver today?
Things are good, Brad. Things are good. Looking forward to today's show. It's a very interesting topic. Yeah, I'm doing great.
Good. We like to start with a word of the day, as always. Kevin, what might you have for word of the day today or phrase?
Yeah, I would say that the end of the word of the day today is tired. We're recording this at the end of a 14-hour day. This is the start of hour 14 today, so it's a bit of a long one. Tired, and I guess resilience is the other side of it. I can always keep going. I just know that, I might pay for it later. But I guess, tired would be the word, but the positive side of that is resilience.
Awesome. Well, mine would be team. And it's just that, we were talking about Ted Lasso before, and he's got, it's a fabulous show, that Ted Lasso show, and he's got so many corny, things to talk about team, like teamwork makes a dream work or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But it's, there's a little bit of thought, behind that, and that is, we need to have effective teams. So tired and teams. That's as far as I'm going to go with that.
That's good. Well, you don't want to have a tired team. You want to have a resilient team. That's what you want.
Awesome.
All right. Well, let's dig into today. So today we're talking about why SOPs, or standard operating procedures, or procedure manuals, can be an absolute complete waste of time, or they can be awesome. But we see so many times that people put a lot of energy into building these things, and then within no time at all, they're all but forgotten. And people are constantly doing things not according to the SOP. And we're like, why haven't you read it? And they're like, read what? And just how it can be, it's a wonderful intention to do these things. But often they don't get the return of the benefit from it that they could and should.
Yeah, it really is a bit of a barrier to scaling, because people can understand, like, it's born of pure intent. Like, people want to have consistency, they want to have things work well. But I mean, so many times we've seen these initiatives fail or fail to deliver what's promised, and it's just so annoying. And it's like, and it's annoying to the point where when you or I were preparing for this, we're just saying, look, it can be a complete waste of time. We did have a bit of an arm wrestle to say that they are absolutely a waste of time, and we dialed it back. But it's just, we've seen it so many times where they've failed. I've had it in my companies, in client companies, in friends' companies. Yeah, it's such a waste.
It's common. So we'll talk about the wrong jobs. They're not suited for the jobs. So you think if you give them a bunch of training wheels and guardrails that they'll be better. Well, no. That's how you build a bureaucracy and a bureaucratic, mediocre company, by getting the wrong people in jobs and trying to give them a whole bunch of systems and procedures to keep them from doing dumb things. When in reality, you should probably just put them into jobs that they would be smart at or capable at. So if you got a really klutzy person, don't make them the person serving the food. Now, we would know that in a restaurant environment. But in businesses, when fixing the wrong people with procedures and processes is a horrible approach. Trying to fix accountability with procedures and processes is also usually a bad approach. So there are great approaches: consistency, sharing ideas of how to do things more efficiently, common view of how things should flow, lack of confusion, all that good stuff. But let's just make sure we're solving the right problem. And then once you're there, we'll talk about how to do it right.
And so think about it as if you were driving up a mountain, okay? Rather than having an enormous book saying, this is everything that you've got to do, we're kind of advocating, let the person be responsible for their driving up the mountain, but then put a couple of guardrails there, on the tight bend.
Put a couple of signs.
Yeah. that is a much, much better way to deal with it, because
Love it.
No one is going to read the manual. You're going to write a 20, 30, 50 page manual, and it's going to cover every circumstance and every single situation, and people won't read it, or they won't understand it, or it won't cover it at a level. So it just doesn't work.
And there are people who will read it front to back. There are, but they're just a small sliver of the population. And generally we're missing the value. We gotta get everyone on the same page. Go ahead, Brad.
That's a great pickup. Yeah. It might work for some people, and maybe even the people who write the manual are passionate about that stuff.
Yes.
But you got to get the average employee to walk in the door and get them up to speed and get them to do things the right way and have responsibility and accountability for that. The big manuals won't do that.
My gosh. I mean, I don't ever read a manual. I mean, I just try to do it. And I'm not saying that's good. Or just there's certain personalities that are more and less likely to do it. So let's go into this thing about, look at this is a great thing to come up with SOPs. You just got to make sure it's core and part of how you operate in your business. And I want to create a distinction between document your standard operating procedures, which is like a historical capture, versus constantly and iterate and improve the processes and how we work. That's what we want to do. We want to give people tools to constantly iterate and improve how we work, which is closer to Lean and Six Sigma and that kind of thinking, Kaizen, versus making encyclopedias, right? We're not in the encyclopedia making business. That's not a lot of help these days, even if it's digital. It's about helping people to do their work consistently at a higher quality, or faster.
Look, a great example here would be a smartphone. Imagine if you got an iPhone, you went to the shop and you got an iPhone and you brought it back and you open up the box and there was a thick 50-page manual that you needed to read before you started using the phone. That's not how user experience works nowadays. Maybe it worked 30, 50 years ago, but nowadays it doesn't work that way. You want to pick up that phone, and maybe the phone helps you to understand how to use some of the basic functions, but then it's so intuitive that you're able to be effective at using the phone without reading a massive manual.
I mean, we're exaggerating here, but it would almost be like every time you went to send a text, you'd have to go and read the process for sending a text. I mean, that's overly simplified. The key is that it's great to have standard procedures. Do it for the right reason, not just because you have bad people in your company, and do it in the right way, which we'll share. So our point number one here today is, now that we set the tone, mapping and refining your core processes is a huge value add for most businesses. It absolutely is. The key that we're getting to lead you to here today is to have to get the new updated software terms and conditions. Do you read the whole thing before you click agree? I don't.
No, nor do I.
Most people, now they're doing it to cover their butts legally, and we're signing away a whole bunch of bad things. I know we don't have privacy anyways. So it's like, but the reality is there's so many things that you don't follow the manual. And, there's this great book called The Checklist Manifesto. And what it found is it did all kinds of studies. They're trying to basically kill less people in hospitals. That was one of the studies in the book. And they tried everything. And they would sit and they would brainstorm SOPs for surgeries and for cleanliness, because infection is a big problem in medical procedure, but there's lots of other reasons. And they did all these SOPs, and they kept all the stuff they tested, it didn't work. Finally, what they found, and this is what I call operationalizing an SOP, is, and this is the story in the book, is that if the surgeon, basically, to make sure that less patients died, when the surgeon goes to do surgery, they had checklists, they wouldn't follow them. They put a tent card, a piece of paper folded almost, to make like a little mountain, on top of the tools the surgeon would use for the surgery. And the procedure was the nurse would pick it up and read out the list. It wasn't on a wall, wasn't on an iPad, and this little basic 20-cent tent card, and the nurse would go, number one, which, there was things in there. about having extra blood on hand in the hospital in case the patient needed extra blood beyond the normal. And they would have a list of all the things. Oh, did you wash your hands? Because washing our hands was another one of like really thorough scrubbing in. And there was a few things that people might forget, but there was 7 items. So they said it had to be simple and it needed to be in the middle of the workflow so that you couldn't miss it. So simple and in the middle of the workflow, you couldn't miss it. No different than the toll booth on the highway. You can't there's no way you can miss giving them the money. They're going to get the money no matter what. And it's thinking about process that way so that it makes it a heck of a lot easier.
Yeah. Some people look at manuals and think that it can provide a point of accountability. So the manager envisions, we put everything into the manual so that when someone doesn't follow the manual, when they don't follow the process that's written in the manual, we can say to them, why didn't you do what it says in the manual? But it doesn't work. It just doesn't work. It's too complicated. People don't read it, as we said earlier, and people will just say, oh, I forgot about it, or I didn't do it, or something. So it can become something that people will worship, but in actual fact, it doesn't add the value that we're really looking for. So we've got to make it simpler.
Yes, and it's got to work for a majority of the workforce. And that goes back to up front, as we talked about. Was this manual written for an A player or a low B player?
Oh, I love that.
Right? And everything, was it built for, like at the end of the day, systems that will work for low performers will drive high performers nuts because they will feel constrained. And your metaphor, Brad, of on the mountain road, trust that they're going to figure it out. Guardrails in a couple spots, a couple of signs where there's extreme danger, let them figure it out and trust them, right? So everything I look at, is it built for an A player? Because the companies that we work with, we want the environment to work for A players. We want the other ones to get ejected quickly. But if the low performers are well supported, overly supported, that means the A players are probably going to hate it.
Yeah. So the quick test there is your standard operating procedure manuals, or are they written for A players or B- players?
There you go. So, we've talked about that third point you were touching on, that is that, people think these leaders, these managers can provide accountability. Maybe. I mean, high performers are accountable anyways. It's about education, guidance, and efficiency. Number 4 is the solution is about making these things simple and part of the process for getting the work done, like we talked about. But the key here is without headache and friction. So imagine like an e-commerce. You have to give them your credit card information and stuff like that. Some of those forms are nightmares. Some checkouts, you might have to give your address twice. You know the ones that I like? You select what you want. I buy almost everything I can online. You select what you want in your cart. You get to payment and it clicks Apple Pay. I click Apple Pay. I double check it's the right credit card and the right address I want to ship it to. And I click it. It looks, it scans my face, make sure I'm me, and then it's done. So that is a user experience that is nice and easy, right? And no different than if you're using Uber or Uber Eats or one of the food delivery apps, or many pieces of software that make it very easy. Is your SOPs should, from a user perspective, should be easy and make doing the work easy. So even these manuals should be easy and simple, and that's hard. It takes more work to make this stuff really, really simple. So use your UX thinking or user experience thinking on your internal processes. And again, Brad used example of an iPhone. I set up last night before a meeting with our team here, a new iMac. You know how long it took me to set up?
15 minutes. I was
maybe.
going to say 15.
7 on my end, and then it ran for a while in the background and downloaded my stuff from my Apple account. I mean, the biggest problem I had is I didn't remember, because it wanted me to log in and give password for a different one of my computers as a security piece. And I didn't remember the password or which computer was which password. Like,
but it was easy.
But it was, and next thing you know, within 30 minutes, everything is working and it's functioning 80% of the functionality I need. I may need my IT guy to do a couple things with some internal, like, SharePoint and stuff. But the point of it is, it was so damn easy. It was just a few key buttons. It was easy to follow. It's like it was made for incredible ease and joy. And that's what yours should be in the direction of, ideally.
So apply user experience thinking from software, apply that thinking to your internal processes. That's what we're saying here, right? How will the user, if they're an A player, how will the user respond to these internal processes?
Yep. Number 5, and then what is the rhythm to relook at these and remind the key people involved what this is. So basically, what is the timing when we step back? Hey, let's just look at how we do this and give this a little revamp. What's working, what's not working, gather some user feedback and tweak it. Maybe it's quarterly, maybe it's monthly, maybe it's annually. I don't know. But there should be somebody who owns each of these processes. One of the things we didn't call out, Brad, there should be an owner, and there should be some rhythm to reset it and tweak it on a consistent basis, so they don't get forgotten and become dust collectors or server fillers.
I remember hearing Jim Collins talk about the way that he deals with internal processes is quite simple. Each person has a seat on the bus, as he puts it, and each person, they have what he calls 10 commandments for their role. And within those 10 commandments, once per year, you do an annual review and you need to update, rewrite, edit, improve those 10 commandments. So what that means is, what are the 10 things that one must do to make this role a roaring success? I love the simplicity of it. And it's kind of like we said, the guardrails or the signs as to this is how you succeed, but we're not digging into every single bit of what you do.
Awesome. So what we're talking about here is SOPs and how you make sure they're not dust collectors and server fillers, and that they're actively used in people's roles. So the first thing is mapping them and refining them is a huge value add for most businesses. You just got to make sure you're doing it for your high performers, not for people that should change jobs or change out of your company. People don't read manuals. And we know that we don't often read the terms and conditions for software and things. And you got to keep that in mind. We don't unless we have to. And some leaders think that manuals and SOPs can provide a point of accountability. Why didn't you see it in a manual? People aren't reading them, and it's dangerous. And as we found out in the book, The Checklist Manifesto, most of this stuff people don't even remember, even if it's life critical. You need to make it very, very simple for people to use, which goes, Brad, into number 4.
The solution is about making these things simple and a part of the process for getting the work done. So you have to follow the process in order to actually get the work done, and without creating a headache or friction along the way. And that is the way that we put it is, think about it applying UX or user experience thinking to your internal processes. Then number 5, having a rhythm to relook at them, to come back and reanalyze them, make sure that they're not overcooked, that there's not too much there, that it is actually simple and easy to use for the experience there. And we gave the example of Jim Collins, who said he has 10 commandments for each role. What a great chat we've had today, Kevin.
It is. So please do streamline your processes, but don't forget the part about integrating it into the operations of the roles and then keeping it alive and refining them on an ongoing basis. We're here to help make things work better, not build encyclopedias.
Lovely. And so hope you've enjoyed today's episode. And the title being why SOPs and building manuals can be a waste of time. Such a waste of time. If you are so inclined, you can find Kevin and I and the Growth Whisperers podcast on YouTube, just by searching, obviously, the Growth Whisperers. Kevin has a quite interesting newsletter that he puts out each week. You can find him and that newsletter at lawrenceandco.com. And I have a newsletter, which allegedly could be potentially interesting.
Is.
And you can find that at evolutionpartners.com.au, along with all of the work that I do and the people that I work with. And so hope that you've enjoyed today's episode of the Growth Whisperers, and hope that you have a great week. Look forward to chatting to you again next week.